Hi, everybody. I'm here today with Brandon Turton, and he is a candidate for One Nation in the upcoming March South Australian election. I'll let Brandon introduce himself. Hi, Brandon.
Hi, my name is Brandon, and as Lisa mentioned, I'm standing in as a state candidate for the upcoming election for Stuart. I live in Port Pirie. My background is in engineering, so that experience does include construction and asset management. One of the reasons why I stood in for One Nation is because you've seen there's a rise in the popularity, and that's not for no reason. One Nation is one of the parties that stands up for Australian values and puts the Australian people first in pretty much every policy that is thought of, and that's usually in conjunction with some kind of social issue that might come up. I have stood in the federal election where I was welcomed and as like a newcomer, and I received quite good support from the people, and it really taught me a lot as well,
Mhm.
because my lens is within that engineering space. So a lot of what I deal with is very analytical. It's very numbers based. And when I stood in for the federal election and spoke to the people, I saw a new dimension to humanity, if you want to call it that, because it gave me some exposure to different people that I wouldn't ordinarily see in my day to day.
Right.
An example of that is farmers. So you can imagine in my particular area in Port Pirie, it's a regional area. So we are surrounded by a lot of farmlands. And to be able to speak to those people gave me a new perspective on their lifestyle and the issues that they have as well.
Mhm. Can you can you, for people that don't know, what areas does the seat of Stuart cover and represent?
Without having a map in front of us, it's a
Yep.
little bit tricky to explain. But
Yep.
if you do look some of these areas up, it starts from about Crystal Brook. It makes its way north past Port Pirie and towards Port Augusta. So it doesn't necessarily cover Port Augusta, but it does touch on Stirling North. And then it goes all the way up to the border with the Northern Territory and towards the west as well. It touches with the the other borders. I believe it's New South Wales.
Mm.
If I'm
It's
not
quite
too
a big
mistaken.
area, isn't it?
Yeah.
A big area.
Yeah, one of the other towns, if you're going towards the west, is Peterborough as well.
Yep. Uh-huh. So a
And it's
lot of
pretty
lot of
much,
country.
yeah, pretty much regional outback, South Australia.
Right. And a lot of those people are doing it pretty tough, aren't they? People out in
Yeah,
the regions.
yes. And
Yep.
that's something else that I'm passionate about, with my background in engineering, particularly structural. So I'm very passionate about infrastructure. And a lot of the times you'd find that the regional areas are the ones that always miss out on
Yeah.
getting access to infrastructure and services. And it's to no fault of their own, because if you look at it from a business or budget point of view, the population is relatively smaller than the densely populated areas, but that doesn't mean that they have to be forgotten.
Mhm.
And that's something that I also noticed in my previous campaigns, that so many people are left behind. And I thought, if anything, the least that I could do is be the voice for those people. And they were very appreciative of it.
Yeah, yeah. And it's like what, well, that was the question I had in mind for you, was what the people that have spoken to you so far reached out to you, what would be some of those common themes, like where they're needing support, especially the people out in the regions? What is it they're asking for and hoping that you can advocate to improve for them?
I'd say it varies quite broadly, because every person seems to come up with a slightly different issue. So to before I explain a little bit of examples, I'd say quite broadly, a lot of the times people, they just really want someone to listen to them, to take on some of their concerns and to hopefully push it forward to get some kind of attention because these people, they would have probably been resilient and just dealt with it and lived with it as long as they could. But then they see that nothing's changing if they just stay silent and accept it. Yeah,
Yeah, and that's what I'm hearing from a lot of people is that they want um they want representatives in Parliament who have an open door,
yeah,
that they don't just get elected and then disappear and make it really hard to get a meeting or to speak to their local MP, but then also to get action and for their voices to be part of change and reform.
yeah.
So that's something that you're doing now. You're talking to people, and is that something that you'll continue to do if you're elected? You'll be available to the people in your electorate.
Yeah, I think that's part and parcel of that role and responsibility. Because I've seen it time and time again, people very much disgruntled and upset, and they tell you up to multiple years. An example that I have is when I was passing through Kadena, I was staying there for a bit, and someone was very happy to see the orange that I'm wearing currently, the One Nation orange. But they did express some kind of frustration that it's been multiple years that they've been trying to email other politicians in the areas, other council members, and they're not getting a response. So I take that on as one of the key responsibilities, just at the bare minimum, even to give someone feedback. It's not most of the time you find that people don't necessarily want a result straight away,
Mhm.
but they want to be part of the process as well to take their concerns to someone that can help them and work towards getting that result together. Because in the same vein that they might bring their concerns and issues to me, I can't do it alone as well. Because I might not be an expert in a field in particular, but I find it very valuable and fulfilling when you work together with those people that are your constituents that you reach that result together.
And you often find that the your local constituents are all, like, many of them have their own form of expertise.
Yes,
And
yes,
there are so many people in the community willing to connect with you, to raise issues with you, but also work with you
yeah,
and help you. Um, and that's where most of the most valuable information comes from, I think, is from the grassroots.
yeah.
Yeah.
And
And
that's the way that I see One Nation as well. Um, a lot of our traction does come from that grassroots level because we are a minor party. We do rely on the people that are boots on the ground to help us push our messages forward. Because without the people together in unity, we pretty much will just be screaming into the wind. But I'm happy to see in recent times as well, we're gaining a lot of traction, a lot of support. People are trusting us more as well because they hear the messages that we um, are trying to share, and they do see some of the results. You still do get some of the people that are quite skeptical because I'd be the first one to admit that One Nation is a controversial party, but in recent times we are changing to be more open and accessible.
Mhm. And I think being more independent often reflect what a lot of other people are saying, but they're not hearing it themselves.
Yeah.
Um, do you find that you have any interest from media? Like you always see the major parties that are in the media, daily and multiple times, sometimes daily.
Yeah. My experience and the advice of the people in our leadership just points to no. It's a
Mhm.
big fat no. My personal experience is with our local ABC. I was contacted by a journalist who had the intentions of making a profile, just like the other candidates you would imagine, just
Mhm.
to get an understanding of who we are as a candidate and our motivation for running. And they pretty much withheld that article.
Right.
At the time, if you can remember, there was not a firm date on the election. There was some time before Albanese actually called a specific date. And the advice that I got from ABC at the time was that they will publish my article closer to when we get an announcement of an election date.
Mm.
Fast forward to when it was actually called. I was advised that the publisher, the editor, yes, it was the editor decided that they wouldn't proceed with it, and that hurt in the form of visibility. So a lot of our policies were quite strong, and I'd say that because you'd see the Liberal Party adopting some of our policies and ideas. So that just gave me confidence that we are heading in the right direction as a party, but we are just disadvantaged from the media outlets that are not willing to really share it.
Yeah.
So then it ties back again to that grassroots where we really rely on our supporters to help us get our message out.
Yeah. And I find a lot of people in the community themselves don't understand voting, like how to vote properly. How does
Yeah,
it all work? How does Parliament work? What does it mean for somebody to be running in your local seat versus people running in the upper house?
yeah,
And how does that voting and how does that role differentiate? And I've spent a lot of time in the Legislative Council and
yeah,
seen the power of the votes in there and the difference those people can make in the
yeah,
Legislative Council too. Um, so I think, I have more and more people reaching out to me saying, we've watched one of the videos, we've heard you talking about voting, we've seen a candidate speaking. What did you mean by this person is running in a particular seat?
yeah,
So I think sometimes the media can, I guess, drive the narrative, but they
yeah,
also should have a role to play in helping to educate the community and showing the community the different people out there willing to speak up for them. So
yeah,
you've run for federal election
yeah,
and now running for state. So if you're elected in that Stuart seat,
yeah,
you can then advocate to the federal members, can't you? And
yes.
also to your, I guess, the One Nation team. Like, what can you do to help the people in South Australia at a federal level as well? So where does your advocacy go for the local people here?
The way that I see it is that they would bring our concerns and it would be something that in the first instance gets discussed with our One Nation team. So we have a South Australian branch, and from there we discuss and elaborate on it, just expanding to see what works and what doesn't, because a lot of the times it's not just about getting your ideas to the Parliament floor, because we've got to be realistic. A lot of the times it might be turned down. So we do have that internal team that would work on it to refine it. And once we believe that we have something that's meaningful and that will pass, there is a consultation period with the constituents and supporters and voters just to make sure that we are pushing through what the people actually want. So that's one of the differences that I do see within our party.
Yeah, so
Um,
that's something you would do differently is better consultation with the community, and then that conversation, the work within the in the party is between yourselves, but then also further consultation with the
yeah,
community. Yeah.
I find that that constant feedback loop definitely does work a lot. People tend to get it's not necessarily disgruntled, but they lose faith in the politicians because there's not that much transparency. Like you mentioned before, our voting system can be complicated if people are not educated enough. And I did want to add that it shouldn't just be the media. I'd add to say probably in the schooling system, we should have some kind of education on that, on just the way that the government works as well.
Yeah, we've had a lot of conversations around some of us when we went to school, we actually learnt a lot more about Australian history than
Yeah,
what I think the kids do now today. And we also learnt about politics as well,
yeah,
um, which I think back then we thought was pretty boring and
yeah,
probably didn't need to know about it.
yeah,
But then now kind of living and learning and realizing that the only way to change things is to change Parliament. The people, everything stems from where the laws are made.
Yeah,
And then once you become interested in that and you start learning a bit more, I think that it's really important that we get that back into the education system now so that our kids actually know what is running our country, who is running our country, who makes the laws,
yeah,
and that every single thing they do or pick up is because it's something that eventuated from Parliament.
yeah,
Like everything is planned, approved, legislated, um, fees, fines, you name it. That's
yeah,
everything comes from that one place. And our kids need to learn that that's so important and that they have a role to play in, I guess, electing those people and shaping that.
yeah. I'd say also from a party level, I've seen in recent years, I can only speak for my own party within One Nation. It's also about getting candidates that are passionate about the country and the values. A recent example that I have, speaking on education of people, younger people than me. I'm not that old, as you can see, but people a little bit younger than me as well. They seem to think of politics in a more selfish way, like what they can get out of it. And they did challenge me on my policies. And when I was trying to explain it to them and how the policies that we want to push will make the country better, they couldn't get past that initial stage of how it affects them personally. So I think it's just the way that we presented it as well should change so that we can show them it. There will be some policies that benefit them and at an individual level, but ultimately they should also try to expand it to think of the country as well.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Um, did you want to talk a bit more about your policies or are you going to more introduce those in the lead up to the election? Is there anything you want to talk about right at this moment or
On our One Nation SA website, we've got a dedicated website for South Australia. We do have some policies on there, but there were some core policies that I did want to touch on a bit. Um, the first one is our energy policy. This one does stem from the federal policies. And the way I'd summarize this one is that energy drives pretty much everything. When we have high energy costs, that has a trickle-down effect on the economy as well. And we feel it in our pockets the way we live. You can see it directly with the cost of living and the pressures that those have. And we believe that it stems from energy. Within that, One Nation has a policy to embrace coal. So we believe that constructing a coal-fired plant that we did have previously in Port Augusta will help with the reliability and availability of electricity that we seem to struggle with this big push for renewable energy. One Nation also does believe in scrapping net zero. And this one is a bit of a controversial one because we are trying to move into green, clean energy as a country. But I believe personally that there are some gaps. And that does come from my own expertise within that engineering space with reliability and availability of infrastructure. Um, One criticism that I have is for the current government who they came to Port Pirie to do a forum just to let us know about what plans that they have and some of their successes. And I found it a bit disheartening that that's something that they weren't willing to listen to some of the people on when they were just sharing some of the issues that they were having. There was a farmer that came up that pretty much said, with all these renewable pushes, they starting to struggle a lot because some of that infrastructure is heavily subsidized, and for the farmers that don't have access to it, it makes it a lot harder for them. And that was pretty much shrugged off, for lack of better words.
Yeah.
One of the other policies that we want to bring up is local government reform. So we believe that there's a lot of bloat in the government. Um, Not to criticize heavily too much the current government, but from the way that I see it personally, is that they have very strong backing with the numbers that they have and a lack of opposition. So it seems like they are willing to push through a lot of policies and whatever they want. They have free reign. So from One Nation's point of view, we believe that we've got to start at the local level. In the past, we've had some candidates who are members of local government, like their local councils, who've experienced a lot of pushback and, for lack of better words, gagging, especially when the council has a particular direction that they would want to go. And when we do try to push back and question some items, they pretty much sense it. So we want to bring in some kind of legislation that allows people or the councillors to speak freely, because essentially they are the representatives of the people at the local level. It's not as if they're just pushing their own agendas. It's we are elected members of the public that are representing the constituents and essentially our own neighbors.
Yeah,
So,
exactly. I never realized until the last couple of years. I I always thought that council was our local representatives, people like you and I, neighbours next door.
yeah,
They were out, they were the ones, representing all of us in the community. And then I started to realize what a heavy presence both the major parties had in council.
yeah. It's
Really, and I don't
because
think most people realize, really.
to no fault of the council in particular,
Mhm.
they do rely on those bigger governments, whether it be the state or federal government. They do rely on them for funding to push some of their projects as well to make the community better. I don't fault the council in particular for having some hidden agenda, but from their point of view, the only revenue that they do have is from the rights of the community.
Mhm.
And so, to some extent, they sometimes have no choice. And because the government knows this at those different levels, they do push some of their influence on there because they know about the reliance that those smaller governments have.
Mhm. Yeah, it shouldn't be that way though, should it?
Yeah, this is not the system that I created. It's just the system
Yeah,
that I'm given.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
One more of the other policies that I wanted to touch on was housing. There is some overlap with our federal policies, but the way that I would explain this one is it goes hand in hand with the cost of living pressures that we have. Housing is another issue. The availability of housing is quite low, and you probably would have seen pushes from our local government on building houses and freeing up some land just to get those housings in. From One Nation's perspective, we believe that that ties in with immigration. I know, again, it's a controversial, touchy subject, but if you look at it critically, just numbers based only, it's not about who's coming in. It's just if you look at it from the perspective of numbers, if you have a lot of people in an area, it strains stuff like services and infrastructure. From a practical level that you can probably relate to, if we're looking at services in the healthcare industry, it takes longer to see a doctor. I can tell you firsthand in Port Pirie, it takes on average at least 1 week to book a doctor's appointment because they're so full. And this is in a regional area, not even in a metropolitan area.
Mhm.
And so we believe that just controlling the number of people that are coming in will give us enough time to build the houses, upgrade the roads, build additional infrastructure, just to manage those levels.
Yeah.
Another overlap from the federal policies that we have is to look at the red tape and some of the tax. If you can reduce that, particularly on materials, making materials a bit cheaper, we believe it'll have a trickle-down effect on building those houses because I'm not sure if you're aware, but Adelaide in particular is probably around the second most expensive for houses in the country.
Yeah. And we've got so many people homeless, couch
Yeah,
surfing, living in cars. I know, like, we have so much youth that, for instance, aging out of home care, foster care,
yeah,
the kids that are in residential care. I hear from many young people that are struggling and can't find a rental as a young person.
yeah,
Like, it's just so hard, isn't it? And it's playing catch up, isn't it? Trying to find
yeah,
houses for the people that we've got here,
yeah.
and then trying to manage it for the numbers that are coming into the country. It's pretty tricky.
Yeah, I can speak on that from my own experience as well. Relocating to Port Pirie at the beginning of my career, it was a struggle to get a house. It wasn't even the peak of what it is right now, but it was just at the beginning, and that was about 2021, I would suggest, where the local real estate companies were really struggling to supply some rental houses as well. And we often have to revert to sharing places. Some people are better than it than others, but I really did struggle because the house that I was sharing was with someone from a different culture. So it was a bit of a shock when you used to your own family dynamics, living with them for pretty much your whole life, and having to learn how to live with someone that's outside of your family with a different cultural background too is quite challenging.
Mhm.
So I can imagine it's even more difficult for those youths that you mentioned as well.
Yeah. What about the businesses in Port Pirie in particular? So I haven't been to Port Pirie for, oh gosh, maybe a couple of years, but my grandfather was a detective out there many, many moons ago. So my
Yeah,
dad spent some of his childhood there. I have friends who came from Port Pirie. I think I don't know if it still is, but, like, there was people working in seafood out there, and
yeah.
all sorts of things. Are the businesses, the local businesses, are they finding it really tough at the moment too?
I will say Port Pirie is a little bit unique
Mhm.
in that a lot of the businesses are somewhat niche. And so some of those businesses that you mentioned are generally family owned and have operated for many generations. So those are the ones that do tend to survive. But I would suggest that the newer businesses definitely do struggle.
Mhm.
Um, and some businesses have shut down after years of operation. So it's a little bit mixed. I'd add in our neighboring towns that don't have too many shops here, they are really struggling. One of the examples I'll give is Port Germain. One of their main industries, if you want to call it that, is tourism. So they've been struggling a lot because their jetty, which is the longest in South Australia, Port Germain Jetty. It's suffered some storm damage recently. So that jetty has been closed and the town is really, really struggling. They probably have one main shop, which is close to the beach. That's a takeaway cafe. They
Yeah.
probably have just a post office, police station. Their school recently closed down because they don't have the population to maintain that school. And when you don't have the population, you lose funding from the government. And also, yeah, that one's pretty a sad story in particular. Oh, one more thing is they do have a local cabin park which they had to sell off their assets as well just to make the revenue for the town. So they're pretty much selling those buildings and caravans just to stay afloat.
The so the yeah, all the regions I think are in one way or another, they're in desperate need of some quick support, aren't they?
Yeah.
But for the towns, for the people, whether it's from housing to businesses, and
Yeah.
yeah, it's pretty tough.
Yeah, in this particular case, I'd say especially for the regions, it doesn't help that if it's just a once-off fund of money. Definitely needs to be more meaningful investment.
Something with a bit of longevity, a bit of
Yeah,
to get it up and running, but then to also keep it consistent and keep things
yeah.
flowing. Yeah.
The ideas there vary quite a bit, but one of the most meaningful ideas that I've come across is getting the rail back operational
Mhm.
because the rail does carry a lot of goods, including grain. When you reinstate the rail, that also helps with the roads. So you see a lot of road trains and trucks in regional areas transporting cargo around. So once you get the trucks off of the road, it puts less strain
Mhm.
on that structure, if you want to call it that, and we don't need to maintain it as much. So that's one of the cost savings that we can get.
Well, I know, for instance, there's been a lot of conversation over the years around the train out to the Barossa, and we had opportunity at one stage for them to reopen that Barossa line, and
Yep.
which would have helped, with tourism and for the local businesses out that way. And what they do, they built a roundabout in the middle of the railway line, and
Yep.
now it's a no. And
Yep.
it's to transport, whether it be goods or people, is transporting the money, isn't it? Is sharing the money around, sharing the business around, and for tourism, for people that come to South Australia, even if it's just for a few days, you can get somewhere by train so quickly and see so
Yep.
much of our state.
Yeah, speaking of trains, I remembered more recently I visited Peterborough, and they are also one of those towns that rely a lot heavily on tourism. One of their draws is the trains that they used to have, some steam trains. And in recent times, they've had a lot of issues with their council as well.
Mhm.
They in a lot of debt because there's only so much that you can raise the rates on the people. Some of the other sectors for that particular area is farming, but with the recent droughts, they tend to struggle a bit as well. So in the region in particular, it's not usually a easy fix, but that's why I'm standing in because I understand the complexity of it. And it's one of those things that you just have to be relentless and keep standing in. And so that's why I chose to stand in again in this state election. It's that name recognition, the people trusting and knowing that they do have someone to rely on. It gives me a sense of fulfillment as well. Like I'm just doing more than work just for myself. I see the impact that it has with other people and that flow on effect. And I think that's really fulfilling within the human experience as well, to know that some of your efforts, you've used your experience and knowledge just to help make someone else life better.
Yeah, and be part of the solution,
Yes,
isn't it? Yeah, and sometimes that feels good to be part of a solution and achieve something that can help a large group of people.
yes.
Yeah. Um, do you have any events planned coming up that you want to let people know about now? And what can people do in your electorate or anywhere? What can they do to support you from now in the lead up to the election in the way of volunteering? What can they do to help you?
In terms of events, we do have a One Nation Family Fun Day. It is advertised on the website. I believe this one is on the 18th of January. So yeah, next week. The details I can probably send to you a bit later on, but I know it's closer to Adelaide, I believe in Gawler area. We
So would that be
previously,
the car? Would that be the
Yes.
car event? Okay, so
Yes.
I've got that up on my Facebook page, on my social media as well, but we'll put the link in the bio with your video as well.
Yep.
Yeah.
For the federal One Nation, we have a movie being premiered across the country. I believe the screening for that one, Pauline Hanson's cartoon, the premiere in Adelaide will be on the 30th of January. And for me personally, on my campaign trail, I do try to look for events that I see in the local paper, the Recorder. One of them that I find most successful, where there are a large group of people, is at markets. So the one that's coming up is, I believe, the Warrabara Market, and that's the third Sunday. I'll just double check on the calendar. That one should be the 25th of January.
Mhm.
Along with some of the social links that I have on my Facebook page, I'm quite active on there. And when events do come up, that's where I'll be posting some of the events. When you spoke about how people can help,
Mhm.
I'd say the call to action is very simplistic in a way. So as I mentioned, One Nation, the way that we get our message across is definitely grassroots, boots in the ground. It's very simple to just use word of mouth. If you are a supporter, just you can speak to friends or family about some of the policies that resonate with you. Um, there's also ways that you can help me as a candidate directly by doing some letterbox drops. So I'll be getting some printing some flyers soon with our state policies. I'll be doing letterbox drops myself as well in my areas and the towns that I visit. Um, Another way is just showing your support visually through corporate posters. I've got a box or two at my place. For people that are much closer by, I don't mind doing a drop off myself. And that's also, I found, a very meaningful way to have that one-on-one discussion because I'm not just a candidate, I'm a supporter of One Nation as well as the party. And so I find very it's it's uplifting when you find someone that believes in the same ideals and values as you. Um, One of the most important ways to help, I'd say, is on pre-polling and election day, helping us to hand out those how to vote cards. Because a lot of people, as we mentioned, are not familiar with candidates and policies. And that's just a very effective way on the day just to have a read through on some of our policies. And it gives a guideline on how to vote. I'll reiterate, like I've always done, the how to vote cards is not us, the party, telling you how to vote, because ultimately everyone's vote is their own and you should vote the way that you want to. But it's just more of a guideline on how to vote the most effectively for the party that you support.
Mhm. Absolutely. Righty. So before we go, is there any one last thing that you want to mention? And
Um, I was curious about you, to
no,
be honest.
no.
I honestly did want to ask about your advocacy
Uh-huh.
because I have seen your name popping up from time to time. The advocacy that you are involved in is something that I don't have that much overlap because, like I mentioned before, my professional life takes me away from a lot of people, but I'm always curious to
Yeah.
learn more about stuff that I might not be aware of.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, I just wanted to ask if you can briefly explain to me some of your advocacy because
Mhm.
if I'm aware of what you're working towards, I'm pretty sure at some point in the future there might be some overlap and I might come across more information. I
Yeah.
might find some ways that I can help you as well, whether it's at an official level within the government or just as we are
Yeah.
currently as
Mhm.
civilians, just pushing or helping promote some of your stuff.
Absolutely.
I'm all about that as
Yeah,
well.
absolutely. And if you're elected, you will be hearing from me because I
Yes.
spend a lot of time in Parliament and I do value the relationships that I have with members of parliament,
Yep.
because some of them have been really strong advocates for our children and young people in general, but for children and young people in out of home care, the fostering system.
Yep.
Also, birth parents who absolutely need more support, and also our foster carers that need more support. So you will be hearing from me, don't worry.
Yeah.
And and I guess my advocacy comes from lived experience, nearly 20 years in child protection systems, starting off in the adoption space, into fostering. And I realised very quickly that there were plenty of people being funded to support foster carers in particular.
Yep.
However, all of those people deciding what that support should look like had no idea what the true support really looked like. And only the people with lived experience really know what that feels like, whether you're coming as a breast cancer survivor supporting others with breast cancer, or foster carers supporting foster carers. It's those people that can really connect with grassroots lived experience, experience that they can then roll on into support. So that's what I started doing, making it a priority to try and connect foster and kinship grandparent carers, whether they were registered carers or informal carers, bringing people together, and then identifying what were the key issues that I guess people were enduring,
Yep.
and then what were those top solutions? What would those key things be that if we could fix these things, we would improve the support for carers, support for families, and better outcomes for children?
Yep.
So that's what we worked towards. We identified the key issues, and which I'm always happy to talk to you more about those. But one of the number one key issues were that foster and kinship carers are volunteers. They're the only volunteers in society who are forced to financially support the people they care for. And these
Oh,
people are giving up jobs. They have no superannuation. People have used superannuation to care for these children. So, I've met with the Premier, I've met with all the ministers, members of Parliament, and I've proposed solutions which would solve that problem. We would have less children in residential care, which would release the burden across various services for government.
yep.
And looking at better ways to support carers, give them legal rights, and make sure that they are heard. But, always is how do we better support our birth families
Yep.
to actually stop these families having to have a child protection experience? So that's just a little bit about what I do, and trying to get people to action those solutions.
Yep.
Yeah, and I'm always happy to talk to you and anybody else about our kids and our youth and our families, and those anything associated with them. And like I've said before, anyone, an existing member of Parliament or any candidates in the upcoming election, they're all welcome to reach out to me and come on and talk, and do a video that they can promote. Everybody has an opportunity. So I'm glad that you reached out, and because we've not met before.
Yep.
And so it's been good to hear more from you, and good luck.
Oh, thank you. And I also say thank you for your advocacy. I can definitely see the passion coming through. And for such vulnerable groups as well, they
Yeah.
pretty much are the future generations. And if they are traumatized and have a bad experience, it just trickles down and carries on for the next generation and the next. So to
Yeah.
see that you are trying to make a difference, I suppose many times it does become like a lonely type of advocacy, but hopefully you do have some breakthroughs along the way that makes it meaningful.
Yeah, we've had some great wins for the kids and for carers, and you celebrate the wins that you do get, and then you
Yeah,
just keep on plowing ahead and working towards the others that we all still need. So alrighty. Thank you very much, and
no
I'm
worries.
sure we will talk again,
Yep,
and I'll look forward to speaking to you next time.
that was a pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks, Brandon.
Thank
Okay,
you.
thanks. Bye.